She
It's
might
recording
do.
now.
Perfect. Okay, so welcome to the SDGs presentations, and we're now about halfway through actually, because this is SDG 8 for today, decent work and economic growth. So there it is. I'm just gonna get rid of this bit here. Really want to look at myself. There we go. It's quite a long title for this one. And when you look at it, there's lots of different words in it. Promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, and then full and productive employment and decent work for all. So it's quite a complex one, but it does also interlink, as usual, with the other SDGs as well. So I thought I'd show you some of the targets that are linked to this SDG 8. Very much an HR thing, but also we're looking at whether it translates for working with children further on as well. So these are the actual targets. I'm not going to read them out to you. I thought you could just have a glance through them while we're talking. Obviously, with an international perspective on it, is slightly different to national perspective, which is also slightly different to the way we look at it from a company perspective. So I'm just going to move on with some background to this. And when you actually look at what their targets are, they want each country to grow their gross domestic product, or GDP, by 7% every year, but particularly the least developed countries. Now, 7% is far more than the UK grow every year, which is, in the points. I think it's, under 1. And I think one of the other issues is whether gross domestic product is the best way to measure growth anyway, because it doesn't include anything on happiness and satisfaction. It's all about productivity and how we're using our resources. So it's quite a complex thing. Is that, how relevant is that to a day nursery? From a day nursery point of view, we can't be more productive, particularly because we've got ratios for the children, but we can in terms of support from the hub. So it makes sense for us to try and keep hub, overall costs down, and to try and make sure that staff are working as close to ratio as they can to make them effective, and that our buildings are being used as much as possible, and we're making the use of our resources. And that's, that's something that operations work on with the team all the time anyway. Suggestion from the United Nations is that we achieve this increased productivity through these ideas. Diversification, well, we're not particularly wanting to do that in TOPS or Aspire, but we would want to offer what we do further afield potentially. We use technology as efficiently as we can. Now, that is something that we look at in most departments, is to try and use technology as smartly as possible so that colleagues can work as productively as possible with the children or whatever other job that they're doing. That we add high value to what we do, that we do entrepreneurship, creativity, innovation. And this last one, access to financial services, is something that I know HR have been working on for our teams, to have the best sources of whether they're going to borrow money or invest money or whatever, although we're not financial advisors, so we can't do that, and in directly. It has to be indirectly. The other thing to consider here is trying to decouple growing as a company from damaging the environment more. Obviously, if we were to just build another setting, for example, we wouldn't want to be doing it on Greenbelt, where we're trying to look after the environment and protect the plants. We'd want to be doing it on somewhere that's already had a building, for example, and redeveloping that. So on an existing site would make more sense than eating up more Greenbelt. So there are a lot of concepts here to bear in mind. some of it actually comes down to this: is hourly pay, having equal pay for equal value, and looking at the male-female gap. Funnily enough, the UK gap is pretty bad. This statistic is quite old, from 2015, where there was a 20% just over gap then, but it is decreasing in the right direction. But as we've seen before, this again is very complex, because our males working in different jobs, types of jobs to the females. In early years is traditionally not very well paid. But the men doing the same job as the women are paid the same amount. Whereas if we compare that to building work, builders tend to be paid more for their work than people looking after children are, because that's the culture we're in. So where we have not got very many people working in building compared to women working in the early years, the imbalance comes from the type of job, not the same job. So I'm not going to go on about that now, because we've done that on previous sessions. But we do know that it's not as straightforward as you might think, and it is a cultural thing, which is why I've been working to try and raise the respect for people that work with early years children compared to working in other sectors, or even working in a primary school or a secondary school, where they get paid a lot more for effectively the same job. When it's just as important for early years children as it is for secondary school children. But then in early years, we tend to be looking after 3 babies, and in secondary school, they may be looking after 30 secondary school children. So, some of the imbalance comes from that potentially. So what are the challenges of SDG 8? Well, internationally, these are what the issues are: unemployment, particularly of young people. We're seeing young people either not going through to college or HE, and taking unskilled jobs with no training, and therefore restricting their prospects. And I'm sure we can argue that in TOPS that's not the case, because of all the apprenticeships that we offer, and we're the 12th best employer of apprenticeships in the country at the last time of counting. So we do provide employment for young people. We're particularly keen on bringing young people in, either at level 1 or apprenticeship level. Decent work conditions, again, we do what we can in our sector. Our hourly pay is low compared to some jobs, but we have minimum wages to adhere to, which we do, and that's just gone up significantly this April, as that was the government policy to put minimum wage up. And we do have a living wage policy, which Zoe might like to come in on if she'd like to later. 0 hours contracts are generally frowned on, and certainly when we were doing B Corps, it was noted that we do have some people on 0 hours contracts, and that was a bad thing according to B Corps, and it's a bad thing according to some political parties as well. But actually, we don't like people being on 0 hours contracts, but we'd rather have them on 0 hours than not employ them. And typical examples of this are university students who don't want to do a standard number of hours every week, because it depends on their university commitments and other commitments. And ditto, some of our staff who also have family or caring responsibilities, and it's their choice to be on 0 hours, because then they can say which hours they want to. And that's quite a modern way of thinking about your working hours. So we would rather have people on a number of hours per week than 0, and we therefore look at it a slightly different way. So our first option is to give people a certain number of hours and have them on as regular member of staff. But if people would rather have a 0 hours contracts, then that's what we're prepared to negotiate. So it's a slightly different way of looking at it. And I defend that to B Corps and other people, and saying, that's what people want. It's not what we want as employers. Obviously, forced labor and modern slavery, human trafficking, is something that we definitely don't want to be involved with or engage with. And it's just, but we do need to keep our guard, because sometimes this slips into other companies, and then we're working with those other companies who might be doing it and we're unaware. Certainly when you go into airports, train stations and things like that, there are signs on doors and so on to alert people as to what to do if they feel they're in that position. And it's something that when we recruited from abroad, we wanted to be very, very sure that people didn't feel that they were in this position. And that's why separating kind of accommodation from employment has to be done carefully to make sure people don't feel that they are working for nothing because they're paying all their money on their accommodation and transport, and that's being provided by the same company. It's you know, we've got to be very aware that we don't want to be pulled into that accidentally. How we measure growth in our own organization, is that all about turnover, or are we measuring it in terms of other things like happiness? And I would like to think that we measure our growth in other ways as well, by using Resonate and other kinds of ways of measuring growth in the company, or improvement, perhaps I should say improvement in the company, rather than just growth as in, you know, how many extra children are we taking in, or how much extra income are we getting. It's not just about income, it's about EBITDA, it's about happiness as well. Now, for those of you who may not be aware of an alternative to measuring just growth, donut economics is a very useful way of looking at things. Kate Raworth, famous economist, wrote this a few years ago. And initially it was a theory, and then some countries have taken it on board, some cities are taking this on board. And it's about how to grow without going over the ceiling of damage. So again, I'm not going to go into describing this because it's not a 1-minute job, but it's something that I commend to you to read, because I think it is a very useful way of looking at how we expand generally. But I think in early years, where our job is about looking after the smallest people with the least impact on the environment, we are quite nicely inside the donut for most things. But we still need to keep looking, you know, how can we address not doing biodiversity loss, and that's why we do our wormeries, air pollution, that's why we don't buy aerosols, ozone layer, that's why we, you know, make sure that our fridges and so on don't deplete the ozone. That's why we've cut our beef use and animal use in our menus. You know, all these things are things that we do pay attention to, but it's easier for us than it is for someone that's manufacturing products, and they're the big challenges. That's partly why we ask people what the carbon footprint is of our products when we buy them, because these things are all interlinked. And if we don't show we care, then why should they? Why should our suppliers? And why should our politicians? This book as well is a lovely way of putting it, that, you know, it's not a question of using up resources. It's a question of how we can grow without using up more resources, by growing the pie instead. Okay, so to focus a little bit more on TOPS, as we've said, we're already the 12th best employer of apprentices in the UK, something we're very, very proud of. It's due to be measured again this next year. So I'm hoping that we are going to do well in that. TOPS already measure the differential of staff and look at who's not on living wage and who is on living wage. And the targets are with people department. And this is the chart that comes from people department on where we are. And the EOT Council have also come back with suggestions as well, and changes as to how we can be better employers. And those have been very useful. I think I've got them. No, I haven't. I was hoping I'd got them on the slide, but I haven't actually put them in. And then so I'll just go back again. Zoe, you're on the call. I don't know if you wanted to come in. If you can relate what the EOT Council came with. I know it's paternity wages and things like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, a couple of things like that we're looking into to review our benefits that we offer for our colleagues. Yeah, we're just in the early stages of investigating the things that they fed back, really.
Absolutely. So that's That's an ongoing challenge because obviously most suggestions come with a cost, and it's how we can work out how to cover those costs, because all our income comes from either the government or children's parents. So it's trying to balance those off but also trying to make things as fair as possible. One of the suggestions was that staff, instead of paying 50p towards the emergency fund, paid £1 entirely voluntarily, and then that was available for people in financial difficulties to help them. But that I know needs to go to discussion and vote and what people want to do, and whether we can then match that as well from the company is also something to be looked at.
Andrew has said that we can match it, so I think we're going to go ahead with it, Cheryl. So.
Oh, really? That's marvelous news. Because I think, you know, when people are in trouble, it's nice to know that the company and colleagues are behind them, because you never know when you're going to be in trouble financially and, you know, need that help to get the rent or the washing machine or a car damaged or whatever it is, to get back on your feet. So I think that's a really useful thing that we've got in place, the EOT Council, and can only get stronger. Okay, so then there's this was a children's video that I found, which was really nice because it kind of explains SDG 8. I'm not sure if it's going to work on this. I think one has to do funny things to make the sound work. I'll give it a try, but if you can't hear the sound, it's the Zoom setting. It's also knocked out my connection at the same time. Ignore that. Can you hear that? No, I can't hear it.
No, we still have the link on screen, Cheryl.
Okay, I'll come out. Audio. Video settings. Audio. I don't think it's going to let me play. However, those of you who'd like to, that's the link, and it's something you can share with out of school children, or potentially with staff as well, to explain what SDG 8 is in staff meetings. It's quite fun. It's only a couple of minutes long. Let's see if I can get on to the next. There we go. Okay, so how could we potentially improve from an adult perspective? I just wanted to open it up to you. Has anyone got any suggestions or things you think that we could do to help some of these challenges, or do you think there are other challenges that you think we should come up with? I can't see anybody at the moment because of the way this Zoom's come up. So just unmute yourself and speak if you would like to.
I would say that it's a bit of a difficult one because we already comply with all of this to a good level, sometimes above minimum regulatory requirements. So I don't think there's anything we can do, or it's not going to make a difference. It's not going to be a big thing.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think about the 0 hours contracts, for example? Is there anything we can do about that, do you think, or do you agree with what I said earlier, that it's not really our choice?
I think in most cases for us, it's not really our choice. We do already have a process in the people team to reach out to those people on 0 hours contracts. We kind of review the hours they've been working over a 12-week period, and if they're working regular hours, reach out to them to see if they'd prefer to reconsider moving on to a permanent contract. But 9 times out of 10, like you say, Cheryl, they're on that contract for a reason, because they like to pick and choose the hours that they work for, because the other commitments they've got.
Yeah.
They got a bad rap from the companies that force it upon like 95% of their employees, rather than us who just do it as an option for those that want it, isn't it? So the fact for us it's an option for them, that those that want it and everybody else is on normal type contracts, then I think we're pretty good at what we do. And with Zoe's process of reviewing them regularly.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, I'll and again, you know, do we think we're squeaky clean with in terms of employing people from abroad and then accommodating them in HCG properties? Some of them. I mean, I like to think they actually get a better deal staying in our kind of HMOs and things than externally. But it just worries me, you know, that the link, they could see that they're you know, they're having to pay quite a lot out in terms of rental and so on. But it doesn't come straight from their wages, so they've got that choice, haven't they?
Yeah, and the HMO industry is regulated by the local authorities as well. So, as you say, it comes out of their wages, and sorry, it doesn't come out of the wages, it comes from their personal bank account, and they can easily go to the local authority and complain, raise a complaint.
Do you think we've got, they get the information to make a complaint if they want to?
It is in that we share with them the government mandated document. It's called Before You Rent.
Yeah.
And it's that big 15-page document that kind of spells all of that out anyway.
Yeah.
And we have to give it to them by law.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when do we give it to them? Is that when they get employed or before they visa level?
Well, before they sign their lease,
Right.
they get that. Yeah. If they're renting from us, but if they're renting from a third party that's not connected, that person should give it to them at the same time as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it something we should give to them pre-start of their employment, do you think?
Yeah, actually, you make a point there. We should actually put it in part of like a visa information pack, maybe,
Yeah.
in case they're renting from a third party. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's something, an action that's come out of this. That's great. You know, just anything to make it clear when that people have got the right to complain, to ask for flexible working, all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
I think you know, is helpful. Do we need to do anything about modern slavery? I mean, do we have any signage in our bathrooms for parents, or anyone think of anything like that? I know, you know, I've seen signs in other people's buildings, but never in a day nursery. Maybe it's not necessary in a day nursery because not many parents use our facilities, do they? And we know it doesn't happen to our staff. This one. Have to ask operations potentially, but it's certainly something to reflect on. I think is it motorway toilets. You go in and then on the door inside the toilet it says, you know, do you think you've been trafficked? And if so, this is the number, this is the helpline to call. But I guess a parent dropping a child off at nursery shouldn't be in that class at all, should they? So there's no risk really. I'm just thinking aloud here. I'll move on. I'll try to move on. Hang on. There we go. And there were the suggestions that we talked about. Statutory paternity pay. At the moment, statutory paternity pay is this: currently lower, either 184.03 or 90% of average weekly earnings, but it's only for 2 weeks. And I'm not sure whether the suggestion was to increase that to full pay for the men that work for us, or whether to do it for more than 2 weeks.
I think it was more around the actual pay that they get, because if we employ so few males, whether or not it would be affordable to offer them full pay for those 2 weeks.
Right. Okay. So is that between HR and accounts and operations at the moment?
Yeah, it was only suggested in the most recent colleague council meeting. So yeah, it's early stages of discussions and looking at that.
Okay. What I found interesting was that when I read up on this, is the recommendation is not necessarily to take the 2 weeks when the baby's born, but to take some of it when the baby's a bit older. When, you know, when it's easier for dads to develop a relationship, you know, so you maybe take a few days off extra when they're 6 months old and 9 months old and things like that, which I thought was interesting.
I would just say on that second bullet point, that does feel a bit discriminatory because we don't offer that to the female staff.
Yep.
So I wouldn't be pushing for that personally.
No, I can understand that. Because women, what do they get? 6 weeks maternity pay at this kind of rate?
Yes,
Yeah.
they get the lower of the SMP, etc., but they don't get full pay at any point.
No, quite.
And why would you give the man full pay if you're not giving the woman full pay? It doesn't make any sense to me.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. So, oh yeah.
And we
So I
can't
guess
afford to give the women full pay. So I just feel that's a non-starter financially for me. That feels like it's a non-starter.
yeah, but not even financially from a discriminatory point of view. Why would the dads get full pay if the mother doesn't? Good point. And what about adoptive parents as well? So I suppose we need to consider that as well. So maybe it's not about 2 weeks. It's maybe increasing the period that they can apply for this. But then we wouldn't get it back from the government, which I think we do for mothers. So it's yeah. Anyway, I thought it was a very interesting suggestion and certainly one to talk about. Maybe not in this forum, but that's one of the things. And then closing between Christmas and New Year is another one, because I think in some cases people only come back for one day, which is quite kind of disruptive on a holiday period. But then for me, that's discriminatory against people that celebrate Diwali or other periods other than Christmas and New Year and don't want to actually have that as a break. But again, you know, that's up for the colleagues to decide, not for me. So how about the children side of it? I've had some help with this because Barbara suggested a whole load of ideas to do with the children, to teach them about good jobs and also rebalancing, being short of money for clothes and things like that. And also with OMEP, one of the things you're expected to have on a day-to-day basis is the opportunity for children to play shop, to trade either tokens or whatever for items, to start learning about the value of things and also about using charts for tallying. And that's only something the tallying in particular is only something we've been doing relatively recently. But it's obviously great for maths, and great for learning that, you know, it's not just swapping one toy for another toy, it's actually giving a numerical value for it. So these are some of the things that we can do with the children. Just talking about jobs, doing the gardening, the STEM activities, recycling, and just building things together, because we do things as a team. So these all link in with SDG 8. And there are some wonderful books as well about learning what jobs there are. It's difficult because they say that a lot of jobs that our children will be doing in 20 years' time don't exist at this particular point. But then I think a lot of jobs will still exist. They might just be rather different. And these are some of the books that we found that was related. And useful and fun and no pressure, but just and also equal opportunities we can see in the illustrations of these children doing jobs in the future. And there are some books for older children as well, which are all more multicultural, but also describe how women in particular can start up entrepreneurial businesses and earn an income from them. Now, as we partner up with children in the Global South, we have very little understanding really of what it takes for them to develop a job in the future, that they and their families can earn money from, because obviously it's very, very different in the UK. But as we develop these partnerships with Global South, then, you know, we can at least listen, ask questions, find out if there's anything specific that we can do for them, or can we advocate for them, or can they teach us? You know, that's as important. And these partnerships are going to come through when our nursery children are doing their silver awards and gold awards. And as we travel as well to learn about what children can do in other countries. I'm in the very fortunate position that I'm going to Costa Rica at the end of July. It's one of the most sustainable countries in the world. So I'm going to be very interested in finding out, you know, how they run day nurseries there. And I've got a visit lined up in their capital in Costa Rica to listen, but also to share what we're doing and perhaps learn what we can do better. So there we are. There's a quick whistle-stop tour on SDG 8. We've looked a little bit at the national and international perspectives. We've looked at adults in our nurseries and a bit about the child's perspective. And we've come up with a couple of suggestions on how we can improve. But again, open to the floor. If anyone else has got any suggestions or wants to discuss any of those ideas. I'm just looking to see who we've got on the call now. So we've got Zoe from HR. I was on twice just so I could see what was going on my other screen, but I'm going to leave that one there. Sam's on. We haven't got anybody else actually from operations because Diane's poorly. Sam, have got anything to say on SDG 8?
Not particularly. It's one of the more difficult ones, isn't it? Because we already do so much, so it is a really difficult one. I'm hoping that the colleague council will help us sort of look at what we can do to improve people's lives, and we do the credit union as well. So I think for the first time we're doing some financial things to help people too. I think people will always say they want better pay, and getting that is always, you know, a priority. But I think, you know, I would sort of proudly let people look at our pay strategy, because we know we pay the very best that we can, and you know, we've got a clear conscience about that. And you know, people sharing that as well. We have done the profit share as well with people, which I think we should shout about in terms of what we're doing for that social piece too. So we made a huge step forward, haven't we? Yeah, we have. And I'm not sure that the profit share has actually gone public, has it? Ellen, I know I can see Ellen's on the call. Have we press released that or put anything on the website?
No, I don't think we have. So yeah, that's something we can work on.
I think that's important. I mean, obviously it was very well received by our colleagues, partners. So it makes sense to shout about it a bit more. And I think that would help with recruitment as well. People realise that, you know, if they work hard and are part of our company, that they, you know, have a good chance of having a bonus.
Yeah, that's fine. We can work on that.
That would be great. Thank you.
Have we got a modern slavery bit on our website?
I'd have to double check, but not probably that we've done recently. I know that for sure.
Because I know most companies do put something about that on their website. So I don't think we should like underestimate that. I don't think there's anything wrong with putting up something in the nurseries, if I'm honest, but that's obviously because you just don't know, do you? You just don't know.
And also, particularly where we're employing people from overseas, don't know if they're in a difficult situation in their home country and they're being forced to send money back and things like that. We don't know that, do we? But we could help someone who is in that position, maybe bring their family over or something. So perhaps we should shout about that, because although obviously we're protecting people as much as we can, we don't know what's going on for them back in their country of origin, do we, for some of those people? So, which I was reading about that's one of the pressing problems for people who are coming over on small boats. I know, but this is not us, but actually being forced to by gangs in their home country. So that just checking that no one's under duress in a way that we can't see. It might be a good thing to put some information out to say, come and approach us if you're having any problems.
Indeed. There's nothing on the website. If you put search modern slavery under Topsday Nurseries, nothing's coming up under the search. Just put slavery in.
Yeah, I've just done that. It's not. There's nothing.
Not coming up. It is on a CSER policy, but I guess that doesn't come up. Even is the CSER policy not on the website? Then is another.
Yeah, that is on there.
Okay, so the search doesn't search for stuff within documents, I guess.
No, so it has to be like the name of the.
Yeah, and same for Aspire, obviously, is to make sure we've got something there.
Yeah, the reason why we've never put it in the past is because there is a threshold that you have to cross in order for it to be compulsory to do it. I think you have to be turnover 50 million, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's nothing to say that you can't voluntarily put a modern slavery statement on your website.
I think that would be a really good thing to do then. Okay. And just going back as well to I remember I was approached a little while ago to have a reduction in rent at the HMO because a new South African staff had debts at home to pay, and she was having to do that as well as paying back, you know, her flight and bits and pieces like that. And it is a worry, isn't it? As to how to advise that. So I guess the advice is to go back to who would she go back to? Her manager to ask if she can renegotiate the loan that she signed when she came over for her flight. Would it be the flight that that they're getting in trouble with?
Yeah. We have been quite flexible on some of them to ask to renegotiate. So yeah, we make it more clear that they can come and renegotiate.
Yeah. Because on the face of it, you know, they are paid reasonably well in line with everybody else. But if they've got costs back at home that they're having to pay back as well that we don't know about, then that can put them under a lot of strain. Which I guess could impact their well-being, which then impacts their work.
Also, IASCO training for modern slavery as well.
There is, isn't there? I remember I did that a year or so ago, so it would be worth signposting people to that as well. Probably all managers and directors are aimed at that, aren't they? Is there anything on the Aspire website about modern slavery?
They were just advertising the course that we offer.
Okay.
So we've got the course on there, but there's nothing else.
And is the course linked to SDG 8? Because I guess that's something that we could do, is kind of highlight that's, you know, that's one of the reasons it's linked in.
Yeah, it doesn't say that on there, but I'm sure we could get that added.
Yeah, let's do that. Great. So we've got some real actions coming out of this. Ellen, did you want to say something? Your box lit up for a sec there.
No, it's all good.
Okay. So we've got a few actions there between us. Sandy, anything else you'd like to say on that?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I was just it was the modern slavery thing just came into my head only because I've just noticed it on a few websites that I've looked at recently. But yeah, I think it's important that we do something, put something out there, I think.
Who would have sort of information that we could use to put onto the website? Do we already have something in place, or does it need to be sort of written?
Have we got policy? We haven't got anything on policy or anything.
We have. It's in the CSER.
Yeah, I knew I'd seen it somewhere. Yeah.
There's a few lines in that, Ellen. You might want to expand on it. Use the trustworthy AI perhaps to expand out 2 or 3 lines into something else, as you know, as you like. So,
okay, cool. That's fine. No worries.
It might be interesting if the if after Thursday the polls are correct and the Labour Party do win, they've had an employment policy which they've had for a long time. It's called the New Deal for Working People. It sounds quite a lot like it's very aligned to this SDG 8. I can read you some of the headings in this policy, which looks like they're going to adopt.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like the first one is ending one-sided flexibility in the workplace, ending zero-hour contracts, ending fire and rehire, basic day one rights for new employees. So you might not be able to fire them under the 2-year rule. I think they're going to end that. A single status of worker, so there wouldn't be that employee work, casual work and all of that. They're just going to have a single status to improve people's rights. Redundancy rights in 2P, they're going to look at reviewing that. They're going to look at making whistleblowing a bit stronger. They're going to have some more rights for self-employed people. Then they've got a whole paragraph here for family-friendly rights, and that also includes flexible working, parental rights, maternity discrimination, saying that you can't be fired from your job after 6 months post-pregnancy. So carers leave rights. They got right to switch off. Basically, what that's about, not being contacted when you're on holiday. Technology and surveillance. Getting rid of that. Fair pay. So it sounds more, and it goes on. So it sounds like it is quite aligned to those SDG.
Yeah. I mean, that's great, because I think we need to stay ahead of this stuff, not be on the back foot, be ready for all of these, even if we disagree with the 0 hours thing, because it's not our choice. And I think a flexibility one came up the other day, where we had a single parent in this country without support, needed to get her child to school, and have the child picked up from school, and having to try and work with play clubs and so on. It is very challenging, isn't it? And if a member of staff needs to go and collect their child and then bring them back to nursery or whatever, what can we do to support that? Whereas our first responsibility is to the children in the nursery. It's how to balance those needs. Obviously, we want the member of staff to work, but there might be a quarter of an hour when they need to go out and collect the child, or might be longer. How can we, in the business has got to run as well. We've got to look after, the nursery children and the out of school children as well. And if all of the staff were single parents and had to go, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we'd have a problem. We couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But at the moment, we leave that to the managers, I think, to try and sort that out. And I'm not sure, some managers are not as flexible as other managers. So we need to have an appeal to, presumably to the people department when that happens. I think it has happened recently. So he's nodding. What happened, without letting any names out?
It's not something I was involved in, so I don't know the details, but we do have an appeals process in place if somebody isn't happy with the outcome of their flexible working request.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Right. Anyone else got anything else to add to SDG 8? So if not, we will call it early, and it's SDG 9 in 2 months' time.
Just going back to the modern slavery, it should be part of our safeguarding policy as well. I don't know if that's in the TOPS one. I'm pretty sure it's in the Aspire one. But Ellen, you might be able to get some information from the policy.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Thank you. I'll have a look.
Sam, that's one to follow up with our safeguarding leads.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, good. Because I haven't read that one recently, but definitely worth a double check. Thank you. Right. Any last points? No. Lovely. Thank you all very much. See you again soon. Take care.
See you later.
Bye.